Megumi-san, thank you so much for joining us today on Tea Time. Let me start with the first question. You founded this nonprofit called Women's Eye in 2014, and it was as a result of your experience during March 11th to support women in disaster-hit regions along the Sanriku coast and their leadership immediately after March 11th. You traveled to Miyagi and you spent over 6 months, I understand, in a gym in the local school to offer support to local women. Could you take us back 10 years ago to tell us where you were and what you experienced first at that moment of 2011, and how did you respond, both emotionally and in terms of the actions you took from that day forward?
On March 11th, when the triple disaster happened, I was in Tokyo at the fifth floor where I was working for a financial company back then. I could hardly stand due to the big shake, and people couldn't find their way back home on that day, even in Tokyo. After the 11th, aftershocks continued, and obviously people were experiencing non-regular days all over Japan. On TV, painful news about how many dead bodies were found along the coast in Tohoku, or the explosion of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was covered on a daily basis. In the middle of April, I entered Ishinomaki, one of the disaster areas in Miyagi Prefecture in Tohoku, and worked on removing dirt, collecting rubbles, and cleaning sea damaged houses. I still remember the view of the damaged town, which was spread out everywhere as far as I could see. It was the same scenery that I watched on TV at home in Tokyo, but seeing that in my own eyes was something different. Witnessing the scenery completely destroyed and washed away by tsunami was very shocking for me. I will never forget the smell of the sludge from the black mud brought by tsunami all over the houses, and the difficulty of breathing caused by the dust mask that we all had to wear. After that experience of standing in the disaster area, I could no longer go back to the normal life I used to have in Tokyo.
Talk to me about how you decided when you were volunteering in Tohoku to focus on the impact of this disaster. You identified two main challenges. One were for single mother homes, and then also the traditional murashakai, or village society culture, as two additional challenges unique to women in Tohoku. Can you explain why the women in Tohoku in particular are prone to these challenges?
I have witnessed the significant difference between women in Tokyo and women in Tohoku. Although in the beginning I was not focusing on women, as I said, but as I went around and conducted hearings of different evacuation sites, the leaders of those places were always men, as you know, and soon I realized women's needs were not fully covered. That is why I have started a team focusing on supporting women in need a week after I entered Tohoku in Volunteer Center. In addition to lack of the resources for women, those women at the site also needed some privacy to change clothes. And also taking care of children and elderly were seen as a woman's job, and such a burden was on women's shoulders. In addition, mothers with small kids had to deal with difficult situations with other people who had no patience to stand the noise of children as they were exhausted of their life at the evacuation site. So it's no one's fault, but mothers felt so bad, and some families could not stay in the site anymore because of that. And we had a lot of these kind of stories as well. And in those rural area in Tohoku, there's no woman in a decision-making position, not just after the disaster, but also before the disaster. So even in the local communities, women and also children had no voice in a way. In other words, men were always the one who make decisions, and being quiet and supporting men, but never threatening those men's position was seen as something that it should be for women's. And I could see women who were playing that stereotypical role, and also those women who actually wanted to speak up, but not doing so due to their cultural background and their environment made them difficult to speak in public. In volunteering for local areas in Tohoku, where they had no food or clothes back then, after the post-disaster, I have continued conducting the hearing, carefully listening to women's needs, and I have officially established a supporting group called RQ Women's Support Center in June 2011 within the volunteer center where I was working. It's called RQ Citizen Disaster Relief Network Japan, where I was staying for and sleeping in a sleeping bag for 6 months.
Talk to me about, it's been 10 years since this disaster. How much progress have you seen with the work you're doing with those same women and what you're doing in the region? What improvements have you seen? And then what are the challenges that you still see ahead?
Women's Eye has held more than 900 gatherings or sessions for women, and over 10,000 people have joined our program since September 2011 till now. And we have seen a great deal of transformation among local women in Tohoku. In Tohoku, where women are traditionally not encouraged to speak up or to take leadership, there is finally recognition started to grow that empowerment of women is important. As we kept running our activities in Tohoku for almost 10 years, even the local government started to ask us for consultation or collaboration when it comes to supporting women in the area. However, there are still something or someone that have not changed as well. For example, I still hear a lot that some women are still stuck in traditional situation, and still wife is supposed to take care of children and housework without any appreciation. And that's sad, but it's still something that has not changed as well. Within 10 years, the needs of the disaster area in Tohoku have changed, and our program, women's rights program and activity focus also have changed. The disaster focused support, including distributing resources or providing support for women, has shifted more like making meaningful changes in the local communities. And for the first 2 years after 3/11, our activities focus was more like providing relief supplies and the salon for caring women at evacuation sites and the temporary houses. But in recent years, our activities, including support local women to get a job, we provide counseling for family issues or their job environment issues. And we collaborate with social welfare council in the local areas because most of the residents in the public houses are seniors and they are living far away from a shopping store. So we provide food shopping and also communication opportunity. We also co-organize child rearing festival with local moms. And finally, we in 2015, we created Grassroots Academy Tohoku, which is a local women's leadership program where so far 100 women from Miyagi, Fukushima, and Iwate participated, picking up voices of women as well as offering them a system to allow them to speak. It's something, it's very important for us.
Let's talk about the women's empowerment and kind of women's leadership through your own personal experience. I mean, you're this female entrepreneur whose life was changed after 3/11. You went not specifically looking to do women's issues, but you realized that's where the need was in the communities you were serving. So what are some of the major challenges you faced yourself as you were doing this work in the region? But then also, are there lessons that you draw from your work at Women's Eye in how to deal with some of the challenge that you've had to overcome along with these very resilient women?
First of all, I they don't know how to become a leader. And there was a gap between what other members of Women's Eye wanted me to be and the leadership style of mine. Also, I was not sure how to claim and speak up about my organization's achievement. It's very, I was so Japanese. So I saw that it was something I shouldn't do. Lastly, I also had to face my own fear of failure, lack of confidence, and self-doubt. That was probably my own gender bias that prevented me to reach out of my full potential. So however, I could overcome those challenges after joining leadership programs in the United States. So through these, I could learn the importance of externally communicating our success and achievement of Women's Eye. In addition to many people in the United States, the leaders told me that they appreciate failure, saying that it is a proof of a challenge. So they said, Megumi, don't afraid to fail, but just keep challenging. And I also appreciate those programs because they gave me the opportunity to have my peers in different areas, and they are making changes in different parts of the world.
A lot of people here in New York talk about the experience after 9/11 terrorist attacks and the resiliency to recover from that. We think about resiliency in the context of 3/11 and the people of Tohoku. And now we're all going through this COVID-19 situation together. And there's something about resiliency, the ability to get back up after a disaster or something horrible has happened. What would you say to people that are struggling in 2021 with everything that we've just experienced on COVID? What lessons did you learn from 3/11 and your work with women's resiliency that can help offer us lessons moving forward?
For me, definitely when the COVID-19 also started in Japan, I remembered what happened in Tohoku. And first thing I remembered was from our conversation, I also mentioned that single mothers, I knew that it impacted them very badly. And so what I did was I started the single mother research project because we need two things: that we can support them, single mothers, at now, like emergency support. So provide food or provide whatever they need, but it's just a patchwork, right? So we also need to solve the problem, root cause problem. Just for that, I really thought that something I couldn't do during the in Tohoku after the 3/11 was I couldn't do the research projects. That I needed the data, I needed the voices at the time that I could use it for the to spread out the world to through the media, or to use it for the government, or to use it for the unknown profit. We needed the evidence.
But it's just so encouraging to hear someone like yourself who has been doing so much good work for the women of Tohoku, who've had such an amazing experience that really show the strength of the U.S.-Japan relationship in a tangible way. Sometimes when we think about the relationship, we think about governments, we think about militaries, but I think it's the people. It's people like you, kind of leaders on the ground, who make the difference. So thank you for what you're doing. Do you have any words of wisdom for the, kind of moving forward? You've told us about words of wisdom for the next generation of women in Japan. What's next for you? Where can we learn more about what you're doing at Women's Eye and everything else that you're hoping for in the future?
Women's Eye will keep impacting the local area in Tohoku and beyond by empowering local women. In addition to the empowerment, we hope to see changes in the local government as well. As one of the latest projects, we have started to compile our knowledge and experience of 10 years, and that is for local women and also for local government that who want to start empowering local women together with us. Maybe it will be launched as a website, and it includes interviews of local women who took a step forward Sharing such examples will inspire and encourage other local women to, widen their horizons. And another project is we are creating a women's index, collaborating with NPO Human Security Forum and also with local women in Miyagi Prefecture to set a direction of SDGs specifically for the local region in Miyagi. We are happy that women are in a position to learn together with us and decide which direction they want the local community to move forward. We hope to prove our belief that culture is changeable.
Megumi Ishimoto, thank you. This has been inspirational to hear about your journey and how it continues 10 years after, giving us hope for the future out of such a tragedy that brought you first to the region and into the US-Japan space. So thank you for your work. Thank you for Women's Eye and what you're doing to make the US-Japan relationship that much stronger. And thank you for joining us today on Tea Time.
Thank you. Yes, it was tea time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.